He thought I'd never find out. But I'm not just his wife. I'm a cybersecurity expert, and I set a trap he walked right into. I never thought the man I loved would betray me like this. Not in the movies. Not in some crime podcast. Not in someone else's life. Mine. My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old and I work in cybersecurity. Yeah, that field where people think we just sit behind monitors and fight off hackers in hoodies. The truth is a little less glamorous, but it does give you a sixth sense for when something's off. I always thought my life was solid, structured, safe. I had a career I was proud of, a condo I paid for myself, and a marriage I truly believed in until I didn't. Jack. Even now, just thinking his name brings this weird, bitter mix of love and disappointment. Jack was the kind of man people notice when he walked into a room. Tall, charming, disarmingly handsome. The kind of man who could sell sand to the desert. And God, could he talk. Everything sounded like a dream coming out of his mouth. Big ideas, bold visions, plans for the future. He made being broke sound like an adventure. A phase, a necessary sacrifice on the way to greatness. And I bought it. We met at a networking event in DC, of all places. He was leaning against the bar, sipping something dark and expensive-looking he definitely couldn't afford, talking about launching a wellness startup that would revolutionize the way people connect with their bodies. It was vague and ridiculous, but he said it with such passion that I found myself laughing. That laugh turned into drinks, then dinner, and eventually 7 years of marriage. In hindsight, the warning signs were all there. The job hopping, the sudden business opportunities that somehow never paid off, the endless list of excuses. But love is a clever little liar when it wants to be. Tells you you're being loyal, not naive. That you're patient, not blind. So I covered the rent. I paid the bills. I supported his dreams, even when they changed every 3 months. I kept telling myself he just needed time, space, belief. And Jack? He kept taking. He always had this way about him. Like he was performing. Not just for strangers but for me too. The flirty smirk. The way he'd brush my hair behind my ear when he wanted something. The grand speeches about how we're gonna make it, babe. He didn't say I love you like a promise. He said it like a pitch. But I didn't let myself see that. Not then. I kept working my 9-to-7 job, climbing the ladder at the cybersecurity firm where I specialized in fraud detection and threat analysis. I trained corporations to spot scams and identify digital trails left behind by criminals. Ironically, the same skills I used to protect banks and billion-dollar companies would later help me catch the man sleeping in my bed. I remember this one night, about a month before everything exploded, when I woke up around 2 a.m. I thought I'd heard a noise. I got up, groggy, and wandered down the hall, only to find Jack in the kitchen pretending to make tea. He said he couldn't sleep, that he was thinking about a new idea for a podcast series on modern masculinity. I rolled my eyes but said nothing. That was Jack, always brainstorming. What I didn't know was that he hadn't been in the kitchen long. That he just stepped away from my laptop. That he'd been watching me work for months, quietly observing how I locked accounts, stored passwords, structured firewalls. That the man who used to kiss my forehead every night had started to see me not as his wife, but as a resource. A bank vault. A target. I had no clue. Not yet. Back then, I still believed we were just going through a rough patch. That one day Jack would land that breakthrough he kept talking about and everything would pay off. I even felt guilty sometimes, like maybe I wasn't being supportive enough, or that my success made him feel small. So I kept believing. I kept forgiving. I kept loving a man who was already plotting behind my back. And then one day he slipped. Not with a lie. Not with another failed scheme. But with my credit card. And that, dear God. That's when everything changed. It didn't take long for the first red flag to show itself. A week after that 2 a.m. tea incident, I was organizing security footage for a work project. Our condo was equipped with a discreet home camera system, motion-triggered, low-profile, mostly for peace of mind. Jack knew it was there. He joked once that it made our place feel like a spy movie. While scrubbing through archived clips from the office camera, I noticed something odd. A timestamp from nearly a month ago. 2:03 a.m. Jack appeared in frame. Alone. He moved with this strange carefulness, like someone trying not to wake a baby. He stood over my desk, hovered near my laptop, and stared at the screen for nearly 2 full minutes. He didn't type anything. He didn't sit down. But he was watching, calculating. Then just as suddenly he turned and left. First, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was checking if I'd left a window open, or just looking for his charger. But the longer I watched, the more my gut twisted. That wasn't curiosity. That was intent. That night, I lay in bed next to him, wide awake. My mind ran through every conversation we'd had in the past few weeks, how he'd been overly interested in my work, asking questions he'd never cared about before. How do you know if someone's stealing your info? What happens when someone uses a fake card? Can you tell when a breach happens? At the time, I thought he was just making small talk. Now I wasn't so sure. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. So I did what I was trained to do. I prepared for it. The next day, I created a new credit card account. Not with my real name, of course, but a dummy identity I use for corporate fraud simulations. The account was tied directly to our firm's internal fraud detection system. Every transaction would trigger immediate alerts to both me and our security partners. Then I saved the card information on my desktop, just barely noticeable. Just enough for someone snooping to feel like they found something I didn't want them to see. And I waited. I didn't confront Jack. I didn't change the passwords. I didn't shut the door any tighter. I left the trap exactly where I knew he'd look. If I was wrong, no harm done. But if I was right, I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. Because the man I thought I married, the one with the easy charm and grand promises, was starting to look more like a con artist than a husband. And I wasn't about to be the fool in his latest scheme. Not this time. What's wrong? He took out a loan, I said, voice flat. 100 grand. Under my name. Using my credentials. There was a pause. Then sharper. Do you have documentation? I'm staring at it. Forward everything. Right now. This changes things. This isn't just fraud anymore. It's full-blown identity theft. And just like that, the case shifted from being clean and strategic to something far more personal. More dangerous. Jack had crossed another line. And this time I wasn't just building a case. I was preparing for war. By the time Jack returned from Paris, I was a different woman. Not outwardly, he couldn't tell. I was still the calm, smiling wife, still sipping coffee in the morning, still nodding while he recounted his unforgettable adventure. But inside I was steel. Every shred of trust I'd once given him had been melted down and reforged into something colder, sharper. I knew about the stolen card. I knew about the loan in my name. And soon I was about to learn something even worse. Jack strolled into the apartment like he'd just walked off the pages of a travel magazine. Tailored blazer, new shoes, and a designer duffel bag that probably cost more than my first car. He looked pleased with himself, even radiant. And why wouldn't he be? He just lived out a fantasy, on someone else's dime. Emily, he said, dragging out my name like it was a punchline. You would have loved Paris. I swear I almost booked you a flight just to see the Eiffel Tower sparkle at night. Almost. He winked, set his bags down, and walked straight to the kitchen like he owned the world. I smiled. Just a little. Sounds magical. Oh, it was, he said, uncorking a bottle of wine he'd likely stolen. The champagne? Next level. The rooftop lounges? Like something out of a dream. And the people. Parisian energy is unmatched. I leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely, playing the role. You certainly look like you enjoyed yourself. Best week of my life, he said without hesitation, raising his glass. What he didn't know was that while he toasted his imaginary success, I was watching him with a different kind of clarity. The kind that only comes when the mask has been ripped away and all that's left is the raw, ugly truth. Eventually, he excused himself to take a shower, humming some upbeat French tune under his breath. I waited until the water started running before I walked over to his phone. I didn't have to guess the password. It was still the same code he used for everything, his birthday. Arrogance and laziness wrapped into 4 digits. The screen unlocked instantly. I wasn't sure what I was looking for exactly. Maybe more banking info. Maybe texts with the loan officer. But I got neither. Instead, I got Nicole. Her name popped up near the top of his recent messages, bold and unapologetic. The preview read, "Finally got the money? Paris is waiting, face blowing a kiss." My thumb froze over the screen. My chest went still. I tapped the message open. Nicole. Finally got the money? Paris is waiting, face blowing a kiss. Nicole. Let me know when it's safe to book the flights. Nicole. She doesn't suspect anything, right? Nicole. Can't wait to get away from this wife of yours. Face with rolling eyes. The words hit me harder than I expected. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I was past the point of being shocked by Jack. But this felt different. This wasn't just betrayal. It was partnership. He wasn't just lying to me. He was scheming with someone else. And not just anyone, Nicole. A woman I vaguely remembered from a networking event a few months back. She'd laughed a little too loud at Jack's jokes. Touched his arm too easily. I'd brushed it off at the time, told myself I was being paranoid. After all, he had assured me. She's just a friend, Em. Come on. But here she was, smirking through a screen, waiting for him to steal enough money to fund their getaway. My hands trembled. Not from heartbreak, but from fury. All this time I'd been calculating every move, every piece of evidence, every strategy to catch Jack. But I hadn't realized just how far he'd gone. How willing he was to destroy me, financially, emotionally, personally, for the sake of a fantasy life with someone else. I took a deep breath, snapped screenshots of everything, and sent them to Rachel immediately. She called me within minutes. Oh my God, she breathed. He's not just a fraud. He's a predator. I want everything filed, I said, my voice low and even. Identity theft, credit fraud, and now conspiracy. He wasn't working alone. You'll have it, she said. This just escalated to a whole new level. I ended the call and walked back into the kitchen just as Jack stepped out of the shower, still humming Towel Around His Waist. He smiled at me. You okay, babe? I smiled back. Oh, Jack, I said softly. You really have no idea what you've done. It didn't take long. Just 3 nights after I planted the bait, it happened. I woke up around 6 a.m., reached for my phone like I always did. And there it was, an email alert from the internal fraud system. Unauthorized transaction. $7,400. Geneva Rolex Boutique. My heart didn't race. It didn't drop. It settled. He did it. I opened my laptop and refreshed the fraud dashboard. Within the last 6 hours, the card had been used 5 times. First-class flight to Paris. 2 nights at Hotel Plaza Athene. A Montblanc watch. Designer luggage. And that Rolex, of course. All charged to the same dummy account Jack must have thought was my personal credit line. He didn't waste any time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I skimmed through each transaction, quietly amused. Jack had no idea that the card he used wasn't real. Not in any way that mattered to him. It looked legitimate. It worked for purchases. But in the back end it was flagged. Every use triggered multiple security alerts, not just to me, but to our firm's fraud partners and a special task force we'd collaborated with for corporate training simulations. To Jack it was free money. To me it was evidence. I walked into the kitchen, brewed my coffee like I always did, and watched him walk in with that same lazy grin, shirtless, yawning, stretching like he'd spent the night dreaming of yachts and champagne. Morning, babe, he said, kissing the top of my head. Man, I slept like a rock. I smiled slow and knowing. Did you? He poured himself a cup of coffee, completely unaware that I knew. That the walls were closing in. That every swipe of that stolen card was being logged, traced, and reported in real time. He wasn't just spending money. He was leaving digital fingerprints all over a criminal case. And the best part? He thought he was winning. Over the next 2 days I stayed quiet. Each time my phone buzzed with a new alert, 5-star dinners, champagne rooms, spa treatments, I logged the data, screenshotted the reports, and forwarded them to our legal counsel. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Surgical. Jack had officially crossed the line, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt completely in control. The guy who used to lecture me about letting go and living a little had just walked himself into a trap so perfectly tailored, it could have been part of one of my seminars. Except this wasn't theory. It was real. And Jack had no idea that his fantasy trip to Europe was already being flagged as felony-level fraud. I hadn't just caught Jack in the act. I'd orchestrated the entire thing. And the irony? He'd fallen for it with the same smug confidence he used to charm his way through life. The fake card. The conveniently placed file. The too good to be true opportunity. It was all part of a plan I had crafted not out of malice, but out of necessity. You see, when your profession revolves around anticipating how people think, how they manipulate systems, and how they cover their tracks, you stop waiting for things to happen. You make them happen. Jack didn't just betray me with his actions. He underestimated who I was. That was his real mistake. I waited until he left for the gym, some new wellness obsession he'd latched onto, before I made the call. Rachel picked up on the second ring. "Tell me he took the bait," she said, skipping the pleasantries. "Oh, he took it. All of it," I replied, opening the shared drive where I'd been storing the screenshots, timestamps, and transaction logs. First class to Paris. A Rolex. Some hotel in the 8th arrondissement. And we're just getting started. Rachel exhaled, part laughter, part disbelief. "God, Emily. He really did it." "I needed proof," I said flatly. "I wasn't going to accuse him without it. He's too good at flipping the script. If I'd gone to him with suspicion, he would have spun some story about identity theft or a banking glitch. I had to be airtight." "You are," she said. "Every single transaction on that dummy card is legally traceable. The account was monitored. Alerts were logged and auto-forwarded to the cybersecurity task force. And since you're the account creator, and the transactions occurred without your consent, you're clean. This is textbook financial fraud." I stared out the window, watching the morning sunlight stretch across the rooftops. The city felt quieter than usual, like it was holding its breath. "What's the next step?" I asked. "We prep a report," Rachel said. "I'll loop in the investigators at Keller's office. We'll file an official complaint with the fraud division. They'll take it from there. Given the amount of money involved and the fact that it crosses international lines, it's likely federal." "And the recording?" I asked. "I haven't started yet. I was waiting for the right moment." "Get it," she said firmly. "Let him talk. He always does. The more arrogant he feels, the more careless he'll get. Just let him hang himself with his own words." I hung up, heart steady, breath slow. Everything was unfolding exactly as I planned. It was strange, really. I always thought catching someone you love in a lie would be messy, filled with screaming, crying, throwing things. But this was clean, quiet, controlled, and in some cold, clinical way deeply satisfying. That night, Jack came home grinning, wearing a tailored shirt I'd never seen before. The kind that said, "I spent more than I should have and loved every second of it." He tossed a designer bag onto the couch and poured himself a glass of wine. "You won't believe the rooftop bar I went to," he said, leaning back. "Like actual Dom Perignon by the bottle. No tourists. All class. You'd have loved it." I smiled faintly. "You'll have to tell me all about it." He did. For the next 20 minutes, he monologued like he was auditioning for a travel show. He even bragged about how easy it was to use my forgotten card. How he figured I wouldn't notice. I turned on my phone's voice recorder halfway through his story. His voice, dripping with pride, filled the room. He didn't know I was building his case one word at a time. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the victim. I felt like the one in charge. I thought I had seen the worst of it. I thought catching Jack using my fake credit card, bragging about spending money he hadn't earned, was the lowest point. But life has a way of peeling back layers when you least expect it. Especially when you're dealing with someone who's made a career out of deception. The morning after I recorded his little rooftop Paris fantasy, I sat down to clean up the digital evidence I'd collected. I wanted everything neatly archived, just in case Rachel or Agent Keller needed it quickly. I'm meticulous that way, organized to a fault. But while digging through my financial records to grab an old banking statement, purely for context, I noticed something odd. A soft credit inquiry I didn't recognize. The lender's name wasn't familiar. I hadn't applied for anything in months. I opened my credit report, fingers ice cold on the keyboard. My chest tightened as I scanned the list of recent activity. There it was. A personal loan for $100,000. Approved. Disbursed. And sitting under my name. For a few seconds my brain refused to process it. I refreshed the page, thinking maybe it was a display error. Then I saw the disbursement details. The deposit had been wired into an account ending in digits I didn't recognize. Except I did. It was Jack's. I stared at the screen, breath caught halfway between horror and disbelief. He hadn't just stolen my fake card. He hadn't just snuck around my files. He'd stolen my identity, used my full name, my birth date, my social security number, everything. And the worst part? He must have pulled that information from the secure files I kept locked in a private folder on my encrypted drive. A folder he should have never been able to access, unless he'd been watching me closer than I thought. That's when I remembered all those seemingly innocent questions over the past few months. Hey, what's that new password vault app you're using? You still keep those client files on your hard drive, right? Didn't you say your laptop autosaves some stuff from the cloud? At the time, I'd brushed them off as casual curiosity. In hindsight, they were reconnaissance. And I'd let him right in. I felt sick, like something had twisted in my gut and lodged there. Not just because of the money or the betrayal, or even the risk to my professional reputation. It was the sheer violation of it all. The intimacy of the crime. This wasn't some faceless scammer halfway across the world. This was my husband. The man who slept beside me, who kissed my forehead, who poured me coffee in the morning. And behind all of it, he'd been orchestrating this theft, calculating every move like it was just another hustle, like I was just another mark. I called Rachel immediately. She answered on the first ring. He dried his hair slowly, humming to himself, completely unaware that everything was unraveling. I watched him from the hallway, half-shadowed, arms crossed loosely like I had all the time in the world. In truth, I was waiting for him to speak, waiting for him to bury himself. And like always, Jack delivered. Seriously, babe, he called out, stepping into the bedroom. You should have seen the view from the top of that hotel. The Eiffel Tower sparkled like it was putting on a show just for me. Unreal. I smiled faintly, following him into the room, phone in hand, already recording. Oh yeah? I asked casually, settling on the edge of the bed. Must have been expensive. He laughed. Worth every penny. There was a pause, and then, emboldened by what he thought was my lingering naivety, he continued. I mean, let's be real. You weren't using that old card. It's been sitting on your desktop for months. What's the harm? He shrugged, pulling a shirt over his head. If anything, you should be thanking me. It finally saw some action. I said nothing. Just watched. Just listened. The Rolex, he went on, grinning like a child. Oh my God, you should see it in the light. I swear it looks like it belongs to royalty. And the spa at the hotel? They had gold flakes in the body lotion. Actual gold. My hand tightened slightly around the phone. Jack flopped onto the bed beside me, stretching with a satisfied sigh. You know what's wild? I don't even feel guilty. I mean, you make good money, Em. You're smart, successful. This barely makes a dent in your world. I turned toward him slowly, voice even. So you knew it was mine? Of course, he scoffed. Who else would it belong to? And you used it anyway. He rolled his eyes. Don't be dramatic. It's not like you're starving. I figured you'd be mad at first, but once you saw how happy it made me, I don't know, maybe you'd get it. I nodded slowly, letting the silence linger, letting him think he was still in control. Then I tapped the stop button on my phone and stood up. Jack didn't even notice. That night, after he fell asleep, snoring like he didn't have a care in the world, I forwarded the recording to Rachel with a simple message. He confessed. Full audio attached. Proceed. The response came within minutes. Rachel got it. Sending this to Agent Keller now. We're moving forward. I stared at the screen for a long time, the weight of everything sinking in. Not as panic, but as a quiet electric clarity. For months I had doubted myself, questioned my instincts, wondered if I was being paranoid, cold, too calculating. But now, with this final puzzle piece in place, I felt something else entirely. Freedom. Not just from Jack's lies or the debt he tried to drown me in, but from the version of me that had tolerated it all for too long. Down the hall, Jack shifted in his sleep, muttering something incoherent. He didn't know that by morning, everything would change. That this beautiful life he tried to build out of fraud, betrayal, and arrogance was about to collapse. And the best part? He handed me the match and poured the gasoline himself. The morning air was still when the knock came. 3 sharp raps against the front door. crisp and deliberate, like they'd been practiced. I was already up, dressed, hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Calm. Ready. Jack was still in bed, sprawled across the mattress like a king returned from battle, oblivious to the army waiting outside. I opened the door. Standing there were two uniformed officers and a plainclothes agent I recognized instantly, Agent Keller. I'd spoken to him briefly the day before when Rachel looped him in. He had the look of a man who'd seen it all but still took his job seriously. "Good morning, Ms. Walsh," he said politely. "Is Jack Miller home?" "He's inside," I replied, stepping aside. "You're welcome to come in." The officers nodded and entered, the weight of their presence instantly filling the room. They moved efficiently, their eyes sweeping the space, already knowing where they were going. Jack stirred in the bedroom. "Eh? Who's at the door?" I didn't answer. Seconds later, he walked out, still half asleep, rubbing his eyes. He stopped cold when he saw them. "Whoa, what's going on?" he asked, suddenly alert. "Is something wrong?" Agent Keller stepped forward. "Jack Miller, you're under investigation for multiple counts of credit card fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized use of financial accounts. We'd like you to come with us for questioning." Jack blinked, stunned. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Wait, what? No, this is a mistake. Emily, tell them this is insane." He looked at me, pleading, the cocky sparkle in his eye replaced by a desperate flicker. I didn't flinch. "I don't know, Jack," I said coolly, folding my arms. "You've been awfully busy lately. Maybe you should explain it to them." The blood drained from his face. One of the officers stepped behind him. "Turn around, sir." "You can't do this," Jack snapped, backing away slightly. "This is a setup. Emily, you're my wife. You're supposed to stand by me." I tilted my head slightly, my voice like ice. "I thought husbands weren't supposed to steal from their wives." He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said. The officers moved in, guiding his arms behind his back and snapping the cuffs on. The sound was final, metallic, absolute. "You won't get away with this," Jack shouted as they led him toward the door. "This is all twisted. I can explain." But no one was listening. Not anymore. The door shut behind them with a sharp, clean click. The apartment was quiet again, eerily so. But this silence wasn't empty. It was full of something else. Relief. I stood in the center of the room, letting the stillness wash over me. No shouting. No lies. No walking on eggshells. Just quiet. Just me. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I didn't even breathe heavy. Because deep down I knew Jack had stolen from the wrong woman. And now he was finally going to pay the price. The days after Jack's arrest passed in a kind of strange stillness, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for the final domino to fall. I didn't hear from him and I didn't expect to. Rachel called me 2 mornings later. He cracked. I was sitting at the dining table, coffee in hand, laptop open, ready to work like it was any other Thursday. But it wasn't. Something about the way Rachel said it, flat but satisfied, made my stomach turn in the best possible way. "He confessed?" I asked. "Everything. The stolen card. The loan under your name. Even the trip with Nicole," she said. He tried to paint it as a desperate phase, a lapse in judgment. But between the recording, the credit report, and the fraud alerts from our system, it's airtight. I nodded slowly, letting it settle in. I'd known it was coming, but still. Hearing it confirmed made the entire ordeal feel tangible. "Final. What's the sentence?" I asked quietly. "No jail time," Rachel said. "He took a plea deal. Avoided prison, but he's agreed to full restitution. Every cent he spent, including the $100,000 loan, is being tracked and repaid. He's also been sentenced to 2 years of community service, and he won't be allowed to open any credit accounts for the next 5. I didn't need him to rot in prison. I just needed him held accountable. And me. I asked. "Your name's been cleared." "Completely. The lender dropped the debt once the fraud was confirmed. You're not responsible for a dime." A breath I didn't realize I was holding escaped from my chest. "I hope he enjoys picking up trash on the side of the highway," I muttered, half joking. Rachel laughed. Oh, and you'll love this, Nicole dumped him. I raised an eyebrow. Seriously? Ghosted. As soon as the news broke, she bailed. I guess champagne dreams don't come with orange vests and restitution payments. There was a pause. Then Rachel said, softer this time, "You did good, Em. You handled this better than most people ever could." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked around my apartment. The same walls, same furniture, same plants in the corner that Jack always forgot to water. But the space felt different now. Lighter. Like I'd finally opened a window after years of stale air. After we hung up, I sat for a while and let it all wash over me. Jack's designer suits? Confiscated. His bank accounts? Frozen. His reputation? Shattered. He wasn't some charismatic visionary anymore. He was a fraud. People in our social circle found out quickly. Word always spreads when there's scandal involved. The whispers trickled in. The messages of disbelief. Some asked if I was okay. Others apologized for not seeing it sooner. I didn't need their pity. I didn't need anything from anyone. Because I had finally reclaimed my life. I changed the locks. Deleted every trace of him from my devices. Got rid of the sheets he liked. Donated the gifts he gave me that were likely bought with someone else's money. I even sold the couch, just because I hated the way it smelled like his cologne. I updated my passwords. Reclaimed my name. I didn't try to be brave. I just took one step after another, each one closer to the woman I used to be before him. Or maybe closer to the woman I had become because of him. 1 week after everything was finalized, I went out alone. No phone buzzing with fraud alerts. No partner draining my energy with empty dreams. Just me. I ordered a glass of wine at a rooftop bar he would have loved, leaned back in my chair, and looked out over the skyline. There was no toast. No dramatic monologue. Just a quiet smile and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Jack had taken enough from me. He wasn't getting the ending too. I moved out a month later. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The apartment had been mine long before Jack entered the picture, but after everything that happened, the space felt haunted. Not by ghosts, but by memories I no longer wanted to relive. Every corner whispered of him. His laughter echoing in the hallway. His coat still hanging in the back of the closet. His scent lingering in places I didn't realize it had touched. So I found a new place. Smaller. Brighter. It had sun-drenched windows, exposed brick, and a rooftop garden that overlooked the city. A clean slate. Packing was easier than I expected. Most of what I owned was mine to begin with. Jack had always been more of a taker than a builder. And what few items he left behind I gave away, donated, or tossed. Letting them go felt like shedding dead skin. The day I moved in, I played music loud, unpacked slowly, and drank champagne straight from the bottle. Alone. Free. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't running from anything. I was running towards something. Myself. With the legal chaos behind me, I took time off work. The firm supported me fully. They'd been shocked, then furious, then proud. They told me I'd handled it with more grace and precision than most people could ever imagine. I smiled and thanked them, but I knew the truth. It wasn't grace that got me through. It was grit. I booked a solo trip to the Pacific Northwest. A stretch of coastline I'd always wanted to see but never made time for. Jack never liked the idea of wilderness vacations. He preferred luxury resorts, crowded beaches, places where he could perform his importance to anyone within earshot. But I wanted quiet. So I rented a cabin near the water. I hiked, I journaled, I cooked meals for one and ate them on the porch barefoot with a glass of red wine in hand. I watched the sunrise in silence. I slept with the windows open. And I healed. One morning while sipping coffee and flipping through a novel, my phone buzzed. An email. From Jack Miller. Subject. I'm sorry. Please read. I stared at it for a long moment. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I could imagine what it said. Regret. Excuses. Maybe a hint of blame dressed up as sorrow. Jack's greatest skill had always been spinning fiction. Why should this be any different? I hit delete without a second thought. He no longer had a voice in my life. That afternoon, I took a walk down to the cliffs. The ocean stretched endlessly before me. A canvas of blue and silver that seemed to whisper freedom. I breathed in the salt air and felt it settle in my chest. Not as a weight, but as a kind of release. For so long, I had tied my worth to a man who saw me as leverage, as a ladder to climb, as a wallet and a cover story. And I had let him, because I believed love was sacrifice. That compromise meant strength. But standing there, wind on my face, I realized something profound. Strength isn't in staying. It's in walking away before you forget who you are. I had spent years making myself smaller to protect a man who never saw the size of my heart, the depth of my loyalty, or the sharpness of my mind. But not anymore. I was done being silent. I was done making room for someone who only took up space. Back in the cabin that evening, I wrote the final line in my journal. I was strong when it counted, and no one gets to define my worth again. Then I closed the book and poured myself another glass of wine, this time to toast the woman I had become. Not a victim, not a survivor, just Emily, whole, free, and finally home.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for updates on new videos. See you next time.